Let's talk about the 10-year anniversary of the Iraq War. Now, if you were watching television, the television news people, they had on a bunch of people coming on to talk about the 10-year anniversary.
By the way, what's the traditional gift for that? Is it C4?
Crow?
Is it bronze or C4 or?
Go ahead.
I bought a yellow cake for the anniversary. I'm sorry it took so long for me to say that. But, you know,
This is Michael O'Hanlon from the Brookings Institute.
Traditionally a very liberal think tank.
Traditionally a left-leaning think tank. I wouldn't say it I would say left-leaning. And the reason I say that is because I would say the biggest issue of this generation, which would be the Iraq War, they were wrong on. So they had on this guy, Michael O'Hanlon, who was a big cheerleader for the Iraq War when it first happened, from the Brookings Institute. Right. And he bought all that garbage. And so they asked him about, hey, looking back, what do you think about what are your thoughts? And here's what he says.
You know, I'm not a huge fan of most of the folks from the Bush administration myself, but I do think that someone like Dick Cheney did not fundamentally seek to expand American influence, you know, imperialistically or go for big oil profits for his companies.
No, this guy's a professional. He works at a think tank. He's paid to think, and this is what he thought. I don't think Dick Cheney was trying to get any oil money. Wow, this turns out I got the. I think I know who's in the running for world's shittiest detective. I think it might be Michael O'Hanlon. Here we go. He's got more to say.
I think he was genuinely worried about what someone like Saddam Hussein could do in power. Now, you could say,
yes, he was. Who knew what Saddam Hussein would do in power? He'd only been president of Iraq for 24 years.
He was a wild card.
Yes. And it was just a coincidence that Cheney was employed by Halliburton, which just happened to get all the oil contracts. It's got nothing to do with Okay.
He's really worried about what Saddam Hussein would do with the weapons that Cheney gave him.
Yeah, well, Cheney was genuinely worried, Robert, that Saddam Hussein would use those imaginary nuclear weapons of his to start an imaginary war, so we beat him to it. That's what
our
happened.
imaginary war.
Okay, so I'm going to go on a limb here and say Cheney's fears were probably overblown since Iraq had no nuclear bombs, just thousands of insurgents trying to kill us. Okay, so he goes on. He's got more to say, this guy.
he made the wrong call. You could say his fears were overblown, and I certainly do not agree with the way he talked about his concerns to the American people. I think.
So you don't like the way he talked about the threat? You mean that he lied about the threat, and you're against that, but his heart was in the right place? Is that what you're saying? That's what he's saying. Okay, he goes on.
There was a hyping of the threat and a willingness to associate Saddam with 9/11, which was never justifiable. But I think that Cheney was motivated by a certain fear of what Saddam could do to that neighborhood, as opposed.
He was motivated by fear, so he was a coward and a liar who led us into a futile disaster. But it was a completely legitimate futile disaster, according to this guy.
He was scared.
Because he was scared. He really was afraid of him. He was really scared. No, the reason I'm playing this is because you hear a lot of people saying this, right? Especially on the right. This guy's on the left and he's saying it. Hey, you know, it's the best information. That is a lie. We now know that they lied so we can start a war because they wanted to take out Saddam Hussein since the first Gulf War. Right. This was all...
They never thought that they had the weapons anyway.
They knew they didn't. They were just like, what's the best lie we can use to sell? We all know this is true now. Wilkinson, the Colin Powell's chief of staff, has said this, that they just lied. They made stuff up. It was get Iraq. It had nothing to do with Afghanistan. There weren't any good targets in Afghanistan. So my point is that this guy still gets paid at a liberal think tank, and he's couldn't be a worse thinker. It's like, how come I can't get that job? Obviously, you don't have to know your ass from a hole in the ground to be able to work at this think tank.
Hey, I know my ass from the hole in the ground. Can I get that job?
I sent this guy an email. I would just like to ask you, like, you really, the worst detective in the history of detectives. Is no one else as outraged at this guy but me?
I think they have to defend their crummy decisions and analyses at the time or else they're totally illegitimate, right? They have to say, well, we didn't know.
Yeah.
Rather than, boy, was I full of crap.
And they go,
I should give my pay back for those years. I should give back all my pay because I totally screwed up. I feel terrible about it.
And he's still, this guy is such a good thinker that he still thinks that Dick Cheney was on the up and up. These guys were on the up and up.
You know, just describing him, just using the word genuinely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
genuine
like,
at all.
when?
Genuine.
When
And we
was Dick
talked
Cheney?
about this on the premium content last week about that documentary on Dick Cheney and about how the guy who made the documentary said, I really, Dick Cheney was certain that you can't be weak in these situations. And he was certain that you have to go to Dick Cheney was lying. He didn't have convictions that Saddam was a threat. He wasn't trying to save people's lives in America. He was just wanting to invade Iraq to fill the pockets of his crony capitalist friends. This is all this is about. Does anybody disagree with what I said?
Well, can I say two things?
Sure.
Then this is like Iran-Contra, where it's like, if he honestly was sincere in his beliefs, then he's grossly incompetent.
Yes.
Okay. And the other thing that for some reason no one is saying is Dick Cheney was never commander-in-chief.
Right.
He was not supposed to be leading us to war at all. He was supposed to be sitting as president of the Senate, and that's it.
Ceremonial position.
Yeah. I mean, no one wants to say that, by the way, the entire construct of this presidency was a violation of the Constitution.
This guy who gets paid to sit around and think about stuff has been thinking about this for 10 years. And this is the best he has to offer. He's been thinking about this for 10 years. If I spent 10 years thinking about something, I wouldn't be this good at missing the point.
He has failed.
So they bring on, this is on the same news show. So thank God. This is on MSNBC, by the way. They bring this guy on MSNBC because I guess that even MSNBC has to tell you the BS half of the story before they tell you the real side of the story. They have to say, hey, see, this is the fake story that people tell you. And now they bring on Jeremy Scahill from The Nation to tell you the truth about what was actually happening.
At Saddam's most brutal, he was considered an ally of the United States. Reagan's administration lifted him from the list of state sponsors of terror, then sold him weapons that he in turn then used on Iraqi Kurds. Donald Rumsfeld met with Saddam Hussein and gave him a pair of cowboy spurs as a gift from Ronald Reagan. I saw them when I went to the Saddam Museum in Baghdad a few months before the war started. I mean, these guys came to power, the neocons came to power with an agenda for regime change in Iraq, and on 9/11 they were salivating. General Hugh Shelton, who was chair of the Joint Chiefs at the time, told me that Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, all of these guys just started Iraq immediately at the first meeting after 9/11. And the fact is that these guys had a mission to try to redraw the maps of the Middle East. That's a fact. And Dick Cheney did not invent the idea of the executive branch being a dictatorship when it comes to foreign policy in America. Unfortunately, President Obama has continued some of the things that Cheney and Rumsfeld and these guys laid the groundwork for earlier. But my God, I mean, Cheney headed up Halliburton for the 1990s. He had oil on the mind all the time. And the irony is the U.S. isn't winning the oil in Iraq. Those guys failed at their own game, the neocons.
They didn't even get the oil.
Notice he never even once mentioned Bush. Because Bush is just this hapless idiot sitting there taking orders from Rumsfeld.
Yes, and Cheney. Yeah, just a hapless idiot. Up until about, I guess, 2005?
But all these guys, like
2000
Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney, they all were in the military, right?
No, none of them, turns out. Oh, George Bush was. He was in that Champagne division. Yeah, but he wasn't like
Took
John
a lot of
Kerry.
vacations.
And how many deferments did Cheney get?
Cheney got 5 deferments because he said he had better things to do than fight in that war. And, it's not like he's John Kerry, who went to Vietnam but got shot in the ass running away. Okay, so I just thought that was interesting because we've been hearing all that crap all this week from these, and people are, and they're still employed. They're still as
Too big to fail.
All the pundits and politicians who told us 10 years ago that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, they've all been punished with higher salaries and more airtime.
Sounds like show business.
So where's Paul Wolfowitz? Because he went and worked for the World Bank. And
Yes, he was the head of the World Bank.
There's no wrong answers in this. No
There's
matter what
no
you say,
wrong
it's okay.
answer. That's hilarious. That's a great way to put it. All right.
Next time I go to the World Bank, I'm going to steal one of their pens. Bastards.